What's up, guys? Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Alligator Sports podcast. I'm Jackson Reyes, the sports editor for the Alligator Sports Desk. And I'm joined with Topher Adams, the assistant sports editor of the Alligator Sports Desk. Today, we're just going to be breaking down the Gators' road victory against the South Carolina Gamecocks on Saturday. Just going briefly recapping the game. The Gators went in there seeking their first win on the road. They had lost their first two to Utah and Kentucky in, pretty disappointing fashion. Really did not look like a complete team out there. And they went out in South Carolina and just, quickly recapping the game. That first drive, they go down there, scoring no problem. From there, it's an offensive shootout in the first half. The teams are going back and forth. Florida showing a lot more composure offensively, and they're able to answer South Carolina. They go into halftime with a 24-21 lead. Looking at Billy Napier's tenure, he's kind of struggled in the third quarter. We've seen in the past, but we saw the defense kind of come up big for him even when the offense struggled in that third quarter. Once again, traded field goals, going to that last quarter tied at 27, but South Carolina had first and goal. First play of the fourth quarter, they score a touchdown. Spencer Radler had a great day, 4 passing touchdowns. And then going into that fourth quarter, things get dicey. Florida attempts a field goal to make it a 1-point game. The block is kicked. South Carolina goes down and scores to go up 10 points in the fourth quarter with about 9 minutes left. And this is where we saw Florida show some real resilience. They go down the field, they score with 4 minutes left. Mertz touchdown pass to Boardingham. And then finally, Florida's defense comes up big when they need it most, get a stop, force them to punt it. We'll go more into this final drive, but Florida drives down the field as time is ticking away. They score the game-winning touchdown, Mertz to 21-yard pass to Ricky Pearsall, and then ultimately they intercept Spencer Radler to get the ball back and win their first road game of the season. So after that brief recap, we'll go immediately into our thoughts. So Topher, do you want to give your thoughts on the game?
I think things start first and foremost with this is a more resilient Florida performance than we've seen. Actually, I take that back. Florida, it's one of the most resilient performances we've seen under Billy Napier. Because what I'll say last year with Florida's road struggles is that they did still fight in a lot of not even just road struggles, but in a lot of games. They fought a lot. Tennessee was a game they fought back. LSU was a game they fought back. But what's different about this game is starting fast on the road, which has been Florida's biggest issue, honestly, for 3 years at this point. Against Kentucky, against Utah, going back last year against Tennessee, then these road spots, they put themselves in such a large hole from the jump, and they play with such anti-juice for the first 2 quarters that there's really no chance of a competitive football game, and you're left just wondering what's the point of the next 3 quarters, because it's already over. So in this game, Florida started with real juice, especially on offense, and then it was partnered with some fourth quarter resiliency, and I think that's the real point I want to hammer. Then, kind of to round it out here, is that it's a combination of starting fast and finishing fast, which I think is actually a specific talking point Billy Napier mentioned in the post-game press conference, which that seems to be the ethos of Florida's football program beyond any schematic things or personnel things or anything like that. That's kind of the ethos I think they want, because they understand that if you play well in the first and fourth quarter, you will win most football games. I think this is one of the few times we've seen that, specifically from the offense, in those phases.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, just being resilient. We saw them in games last year against Tennessee and Florida State. Two that come to mind immediately are, games that came down to final possession and Florida just couldn't get it done. But, it's huge confidence booster to have a game like this where you go into a tough environment like Williams-Brice Stadium. You come back from double digits and you win this game, and we'll talk a little bit on the defensive side, but I feel like a lot of what we're going to talk about today is about the offense, because that has been the point of emphasis of, can they start fast? Can they be consistent, especially in these tough run environments? And they struggled a little bit in the third quarter, but they really answered the call. I think that starts with Graham Mertz and his day today. So, I'll start give a little bit of thoughts. I thought Florida did a much better job of airing it out. I think that's hard to argue with. Florida they saw a weak spot in the middle, uh, picking apart the South Carolina linebackers in the secondary. Arliss Boardingham had another big game, had 5 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown. His emergence has really opened up the passing game for Florida and has allowed Mertz to, look downfield more and able to push the ball down the field rather than have to rely on so many screen passes. Topher, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, I think this is the most aggressive we've seen Graham Mertz this season. I guess I would have to really dig into the tape to tell you if there's a schematic aggression we're seeing from Billy Napier and the actual calls onto the field. But just the willingness to say, my guy has a one-on-one, give him a chance and push the ball down the field in that sense, um, is something we haven't seen. And I think just taking those shots softens up the defense. And Florida has talented skill players. Um, it's definitely still not where they want it to be or where it needs to be SEC national champion type of program. But there are really talented players. Ricky Pearsall is an NFL player. Eugene Wilson is a very talented player. Khalil Jackson is turning into a really nice college football player. Um, and I think the big thing is just showing some versatility, not even just pass versus run, but in different elements of the passing game. Uh, I think it helps when you play the worst secondary in Power Five football. South Carolina is really bad on the back end. They were torched by Tennessee, who's had their struggles. They've been torched by Mississippi State, who's had their struggles. Obviously, they were torched by North Carolina and Drake May, but that's a little more excusable. So, you know, they had a matchup, and full credit to them for taking advantage of a matchup and using it as an opportunity to show what the offense can be when things are really clicking in that sense or in that area. So really interesting, and definitely a very effective game overall from Graham Mertz, Ricky Pearsall, and the entire Florida offense.
Yeah, and I think, important things to look at is, as you mentioned, Topher, talking about the versatility of the playmakers. Uh, there's been Billy Napier has not shied away from the fact that he wants to get his guys in space, try and do things, and we've seen that mostly in the screen game. Mertz will throw a screen pass to Pearsall, a screen pass to Eugene Wilson, and see like, okay, what can my athletes do in space with their speed and athleticism? But it was really nice to see a good change of pace to see. Well, these guys are great players. They're great route runners. Let's see what they can do when we send them down the field and Mertz just throws it up to them. And we saw obviously Ricky Pearsall, an incredible game from him, 10 receptions, 106 receiving yards, and as I mentioned, the game-winning receiving touchdown. Khalil Jackson had a receiving touchdown. He made a great catch earlier in the game, streaking down the field, and then kind of dove out to make a grab as Mertz pass died down a little bit as it was going. And these are guys who maybe past Pearsall, they're not names that immediately jump out like a Khalil Jackson, but these are still guys who can, come up big for you and make big plays. We saw Jackson make some big plays in the Tennessee game. So these are guys who, even against superior SEC competition, they have the ability to make plays if Mertz can put them in the right spots, which he was doing Saturday. And you look again. Another one more thing I want to point out is Mertz only had a 63% completion percentage, still a good completion percentage, but for his terms this season, where he had the 80% completion percentage going into this game, much lower. He had 18 incompletions, but still had an amazing game and probably his best game of the season by far, just as a quarterback. So showing his ability to push it downfield rather than just always take the safe play was really refreshing to see.
Yeah. What I'll add is it's nice to see Florida try to be more aggressive in the passing game, but I don't think their passing game is good enough to seriously threaten a good SEC defense. Um, to be fair, I think there's one of those left on the schedule in Georgia. I don't trust LSU. I don't really trust Missouri all that much. Definitely don't trust Arkansas. And then Florida State, I don't know. But to get to the next level as a football program, the offense needs to be more consistently good. Um, and I don't think we really talked much about the running game, but it was fine. It's weird. Florida's a rush run first program under Billy Napier, but that really wasn't the case in this game. And you can't really say it was a game states situation either, because Utah, for example, Graham Mertz ended up with a lot of passing yards, a lot of attempts, but that's because they were in like 17-0 hole in the first quarter. This one was more they're just aggressive and kind of taking it to them, and I think that's where the varied approach of the offense is starting to show, and I think that's a very interesting thing moving forward. But I think my takeaway now that we're a day removed and the craziness of what was a really exciting college football game and one of the most fun we've gotten to cover is that it is South Carolina. South Carolina is not particularly good, and honestly, as much as we praise Graham Mertz for his performance, he wasn't the best quarterback in this game. If Florida has Spencer Rattler in this game, they might hit on a couple more of those deep shots, because I can tell you in this game there are several times where they dial up like a slot fade or something to Khalil Jackson, something like that. And the throw's just not close. It's a foul ball. There's no chance. It's a never in history ball. And Graham Mertz still throws too many of those. So what we're seeing with Florida is that it's either hyper efficient, everything's a screen, or win some, lose some, downfield accuracy kind of. So that's kind of the limitations of Graham Mertz. But beyond any of my questions about his ability and his ability to win in a big game, I think the thing I want to end on this point is the mentality, the leadership, the experience from a guy like Graham Mertz is extremely impressive. I don't know if Florida wins this game with Anthony Richardson. I love Anthony Richardson. He seems like a delightful guy. He's certainly a more talented athlete. I think he's a more talented quarterback than Graham Mertz, and I don't think it's particularly close. I don't think Graham Mertz would say it's particularly close if he was being totally honest. But Graham Mertz has been here. He even mentioned in the post-game press conference a situation against Penn State in 2021 while he was at Wisconsin, where he was in a similar spot against a very good Penn State team, and he kind of choked it. And this was kind of redemption for him. And that's the kind of leadership and nuance and experience that only comes from a guy who's in his fourth season, a guy who's made almost 30 starts in college. And I think that's so helpful for a Florida team that's relying so heavily on freshmen and sophomores and redshirt freshmen all across the board, to have a guy who you can count on, who's seen it all, who's done it all, who has the mental toughness to bounce back. He has those foul ball throws, but he just keeps on trucking. He doesn't worry about it. He has an interception in one of these games. He just keeps on trucking, doesn't worry about it. He gets sacked and he's head up. Let's keep moving. Having a leader like that for your offense and having a veteran in your locker room like that is hugely important. And more than anything he does with the football in his hands, which again, I will continue to question until he definitively proves me wrong, the off the field stuff and the character stuff has been really, really impressive. And I think that's one of the shining lights for Florida this season.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think that just leads me to my next point where, I really just want to focus in on this fourth quarter. As I mentioned, just kind of setting the scene. First play of the fourth quarter, it's first and goal South Carolina. Spencer Rattler rolls out, touchdown pass to go up 31-27. Then Florida drives down. They're stuffed on third down. They try to kick a field goal. It's blocked. And then South Carolina again, Spencer Rattler, they drive down the field. They score another touchdown. It's 37-27 after a missed extra point. There's about 8 minutes left in this game. It would be really easy for Florida just to kind of roll over and just chalk it up as another tough road loss. But as you mentioned, that resiliency and that leadership, Florida really came up big in this game. And, I've talked about it in the past with the Kentucky loss and the Utah loss where, when the team went down, the team needed to score points quick. I kind of saw sort of almost a lack of urgency. And that was something that was talked a lot in the post game where all week in practice, like this was one of their best weeks of practices. And, one of those high points, and the reasoning behind that was because there was such a sense of urgency in everything they were doing across the board, coaches, players, staff. And I think that really showed where, you know, they looked calm, collected, driving down the field. Obviously, maybe not as fast as you want it to go, but they were still able to score a touchdown to make it a 3-point game with 4 minutes left, which is plenty of time to try and get a stop and, you know, get the ball back and score one more time. So, talking about that first touchdown drive, Topher, Jack, add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, that was the Arliss Boardingham drive, right?
Yeah.
I think, as much as I talk about Mertz and certainly Ricky Pearsall as like great leaders, what a moment for Arliss Boardingham, redshirt freshman. He's clearly the number one tight end on this team now. That was a real position of uncertainty entering the season, a position of uncertainty early in the season. Odom and Livingston and all these guys cycling through. But, Arliss Boardingham is becoming a real playmaker. And there was a play, I think it was on that drive, where it's like fourth down, and the only option is to check it down to Boardingham in the flat, and he goes and makes a play. Um, that takes a lot. It takes a lot of trust to just say, all right, our guy's got to go do something instead of trying to force it downfield, and rewarding that trust from your coaches and from your team with a big play like that. And then he obviously ends it with a touchdown, which was a really impressive grab on a shaky throw from Mertz. I mean, really, really impressive moment for Arliss Boardingham in that fourth quarter. And yeah, a whole lot of life. And I think, you talked about the lack of urgency. I think it was like a 4.5 minute touchdown drive, which maybe is still a little bit slow for a fourth quarter, but it's certainly a lot more urgent than their big, long scoring drive in Utah. So I think that's definitely something to look at.
Exactly. And, just to give some more added context to that Boardingham play, as you mentioned, an incredible play. It's 4th and 11. So Mertz checks it down to Boardingham, and he needs to get 11 yards to get this first down. And, as you mentioned, that's the freshman makes a great play to convert.
We've seen this season. Against Vanderbilt, I think it was like a 3rd and 8. He catches it short of the sticks and goes and makes a play. So he's becoming both a real safety valve, which you need from a tight end, and also a genuinely dynamic playmaker, which is not something we've seen from a Florida tight end. I don't know. That's Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. And, I just want to collect my flowers on this one, as I did in the preseason previewing this Utah game. I talked about Arliss Boardingham as one of my players to watch. I thought he would emerge as a breakout player. So just, I'm going to pat myself on the back for that take, because he's been playing well the past few games and really emerging as a real player on this Gators offense. And so Florida scores, and Shamar James talked about in the press conference. Florida kind of had a shaky game defensively that game. Spencer Radler had an incredible game against Florida, despite the loss. He was dicing up Florida's defense all game. He had 4 passing touchdowns, I believe, was super efficient. They did not have an incompletion until like late second quarter, when he just had to throw the ball away to avoid a sack. And just, he had a really great game. But as Shamar James mentioned, it was one play, one drive mentality. That was what the defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong, was enforcing, all season. And it's just, despite everything that happened in that play or in that game, just go out, just need one stop. And, started off a little shaky, 2nd and 5. You force Spencer Radler, incomplete pass. After Jason Marshall broke it up, you're forcing a 3rd down. You think, okay, we just need one more play. We're going to get a stop. But roughing the passer called, Cam Jackson tackled Spencer Radler after the play. He's flagged for it. You give South Carolina a first down at midfield, and that's one of those demoralizing penalties that you think you're about to get a 3rd down and just need that one more play, and then no, new set of downs. And Florida was not deterred. They stuffed him on the first down, Mario Anderson on the first down for just 2 yards. Then Spencer Radler tried to pass the ball short for 2 yards. And then on 3rd down, Spencer Radler again tries to pass to Trey Knox. He's stuffed for no gain, and the Gamecocks have to punt it away as Florida takes their final timeout with 2:43 left in the game. So, just a huge defensive drive for the Gators. And, Topher, would you like to add on to that?
The defense was bad in this game. It was a lot closer to Kentucky than it was to Tennessee. And I think if you want to look at it holistically, you have to be a little disappointed. However, it's kind of the same thing as the offense where there was real resilience and showing up really in the whole second half. I thought they were a lot better. Obviously, there was that little run in the late third quarter, early fourth quarter, but a lot better. And they tightened up a little bit, and they just made big plays when they needed to make big plays. Um, so there will be things to look at and a lot of things that need to get a lot better for Florida's defense. But the thing about defense in 2023 is that it's not really about dominating as much as it is about making plays when you need to make plays. And in that sense, Florida did what it needed to do defensively. They made the plays when they needed to make the plays, and this was a really good example of that.
Yeah, and so, going back to it, the game, kind of just breaking it down. South Carolina punts the ball away. It's out of bounds at the Florida 25, so Florida has to drive 75 yards down the field to score the game-winning touchdown with no timeouts and less than 3 minutes left. And going back to Topher, your point about resilience and leadership, first play, Graham Mertz, pass incomplete. Second play, another incomplete pass. Third play, incomplete pass again. Just some good South Carolina defense and, Florida failing to convert. So Florida immediately faced with a 4th and 10 very quickly at their own 25-yard line. And we see Graham Mertz make one of the best plays from him on the day. And so he takes the ball. As he's rolling out, the South Carolina defender's kind of barreling down on him. He evades the pressure, gets out of the way of the defender before he can break him down for a sack. And he just sees Pearsall down the field one-on-one, throws it up to him, see if his best guy can come up with the ball. And we see Pearsall make a great catch in midfield to convert this first down. And, from there –
Actually, before you go on, I think we need to talk about it because of what happened later in the drive. I think it's easy to overlook how huge a 4th and 10 in your own territory is, and what a play that is from Mertz. I think I joked about it. That's his Sam Hartman moment.
Yeah,
from the Notre Dame Duke game a few weeks ago. It's your senior veteran quarterback. Just you really need a play. You have to have a play, and he hangs in there. He keeps the play alive, extends the play, and he finds his guy. And again, for all my problems with Mertz, this was what he showed: is that he's a resilient guy, and he makes plays when you need it. And I think that's not really something I expected to see from Graham Mertz. I expected him to be fine, but I didn't expect him to have a little bit of clutch gene, a little bit of that dog in him, for lack of a better word. And this was, I think, more than even the crazy plays in this drive, I think that's the best example of Graham Mertz's inner dog.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree there. And then, next play, incomplete pass, and Montrell Johnson rushes for 11 yards to get into South Carolina territory. And then, this next play, I don't want to discredit Trey Wilson here because it was an incredible play from him, but I really can't chalk this play up anything other than just extreme luck. And as I think Napier said, Scott was smiling at the Gators today.
He referenced a very famous old Steve Spurrierism of God's not on the Gators because boy how he did that.
It was incredible. So Graham Mertz drops back. He throws it to Pearsall. That's his target. That's what he's looking for. Pearsall can't bring down the ball, but he kind of bobbles it up for a second. And as the ball is out and he's not going to make this catch, Trey Wilson just swoops in, is able to catch the ball. He grabs the loose ball and he takes off for a 22-yard gain and another Gators first down. And, I think most of us in the press box just couldn't believe what we had just seen in that play. And, 2 plays later, Graham Mertz stands strong as a South Carolina defender once again is putting pressure on him. Lets it fly. He finds Pearsall again in cover 1. Pearsall again, great player, just goes up, brings down the ball in the end zone as Mertz. I believe they called a roughing the passer penalty that obviously was declined. So his ability to be physical and stand through, take a hit, find his guy. Then obviously Pearsall, great job against the defender, make that grab, and Florida goes up 41-37 with 40 seconds left. And we have not seen a comeback like that from Napier. Obviously, Utah, they had to drive down, score last second, and then get a stop. But, to be down double digits on the road like that it was very impressive to see that offensive display. But anything else you'd like to add from the offensive perspective?
I don't think so. I just want to add another note on Ricky Pearsall. That guy, I said he's an NFL player, and he's gonna just be one of the most reliable NFL receivers forever. I don't know if he'll ever make a Pro Bowl. I don't know if he'll ever be an All Pro, but he's just gonna be on like the Browns roster for 15 years as their number 2 or 3 receiver because he's just so unbelievably reliable. He's so consistent. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Um, he's really become a true number one guy for Florida. And honestly, if we really think back to last year, it kind of felt like forced hype to give him the number one because Florida's trying to make that like a thing, right? Number one, it really means something. Really has not meant something since Kadarius Toney, at least.
Yeah.
Like Jacob Copeland, respectfully, that was kind of forced hype. Ricky Pearsall the first year, like coming into the year, it kind of felt a little bit like you're just defaulting to a guy who is good, not necessarily a guy who's special. Ricky Pearsall is not just good; he is special, and he's the most consistent player I think for Florida's entire team. This was a real showcase game for him. I think he had 10 catches for like 160 yards. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
pretty impressive.
Yeah, great game from him. And South Carolina's going to get the ball back with 40 seconds left. They have a chance to score. A couple plays later, Spencer Adler faces some pressure, throws up a prayer. It's picked off by Miguel Mitchell. Florida runs the clock out. They take a safety just to end it, and that's the ball game essentially. And so going forward, Florida getting their first road win of the 2023 regular season, huge momentum shift for them going into their bye week. And looking at this Gators team, they're 5-2, 3-1 in the SEC. Obviously, post bye week, they're going to have their toughest challenge of the season against the Georgia Bulldogs. But just in terms of looking at the big picture, the season as a whole, Florida's in a great place right now, and honestly, much better than maybe they could have seen themselves being in at this point going into the bye.
Yeah, I think this. If you just look at the numbers, you don't look at how they played, who they did it against. This is basically the realistic best case scenario. Florida to start the first half of the year, 5-2. Take care of business. There's no real shenanigans games. I mean, when you play Utah, Tennessee, and Kentucky, with where Florida's at, you kind of expected to drop 2 of those. And, beating Tennessee is a real nice little boost. Finally get a road win against a South Carolina team that's going to be the darndest 4-8 team you've ever seen. That sounds like a shot. I do really like South Carolina, but it's just facts are the facts. I don't know what to say. Yeah, it's a really good start. The problem with Florida is that, the money gets made on the back end. The schedule gets a whole hell of a lot harder real fast. And if you play the schedule game, honestly, anything from 0 to 5 wins is in the realm of possibility. And honestly, 6 to 8 is super possible. That whole range is very open.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, looking at this game or looking at this the rest of the season, I think Georgia's going to be very tough. I think you kind of have to chalk that one up as a loss. Florida maybe a year or two away from catching up to just the talent that Bulldogs team has. But you look at the other teams, Florida showing this resilience in the road. If they can take that to an LSU team that has shown that they have one of the worst defenses in college football, that's a winnable game. They'll likely be favored against Arkansas at home. Arkansas has been one of the not great SEC teams so far, and obviously Florida has shown that when they're at home, they're just a much better football team. And then going on the road to Missouri, they're a very talented football team that'll be tough. And obviously round out the season with another very tough game against in-state rivals Florida State. So it'll be interesting to see how Florida plays it out. But
it's really tough. I don't want to overstate it. I mean, we're talking 2 top 5 teams, 2 teams that are already shoo-ins for the playoff at this point, in Georgia and Florida State. LSU, who's arguably the best 2-loss team in the country, Heisman caliber quarterback, 2 first-round receivers. Missouri is like baby LSU. They have a worse quarterback, but honestly, maybe even better receivers somehow. And then Arkansas is, I make the joke about South Carolina being the darndest 4-8 team. I don't know. Arkansas is the darndest 3-9 team you've ever seen because it's the SEC and all these teams are really, really darn good, really good football teams. I don't know. If Florida cleans some stuff up, they do still have good players. I could see 8 wins, and why not? I still think they're going to be Florida State at the end of the year. It's total vibes pick, but I don't know. I see the vision.
I mean, there is a path there, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Florida, year two under Billy Napier, trying to build on that 6 and 7 year in the first year, and obviously everybody knows it's a rebuilding process, but you know, doing the right things and doing what you need to do, just to keep making positive progress and keep moving forward into making sure that this success isn't just happening but it's sustainable. And I think we're seeing that so far. Looking big picture, looking at the recruiting class that Billy Napier has amassed so far for 2024 and the guys he's seen so far. Obviously, we didn't really talk about Trey Wilson, but he had a really great game against South Carolina. And he's a guy who's just turned into a real breakout star as a freshman.
You know who probably had a lot of fun watching Florida air the ball out?
Steve Spurrier?
Yes, he did probably. DJ Lagway.
Oh, true.
You want to talk about the future?
Yeah,
the future is super bright. I mean, you talk about the recruiting class in just numerical terms, it's impressive, but the actual dudes, they're real guys.
Oh yeah.
And Florida's already proven under Billy Napier that they can find guys slightly under the radar that can be real difference makers. So I think all the off-field stuff, the future's super duper bright.
Yeah. So obviously, it's been a mixed bag this year in terms of how they're getting these wins, but at the end of the day, what matters is you win the game. And we've looked at Florida this year. They've shown they can do the things that you want to see out of them. They can win a big SEC game like Tennessee. They can go on the road into a tough environment and win and come back on top of that on the road. We just saw that with South Carolina. So obviously not a perfect team, and there have been some disappointing performances, but 5-2 past the midway point of the season, heading into the bye week. I would say the Gators are in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I agree. This is exactly where they'd want to be. And in that sense, as long as they beat Arkansas to get to 6 wins, you can say it's a perfectly fine, dare I say, even good season. And then they have a very real opportunity to make it a great season and start getting a little ahead of schedule in the Napier rebuild.
I agree. And so thank you, everyone, to listening to our thoughts on the Gators and our breakdown of the South Carolina game. To check out our work, you can go to alligator.org to read all of our work there. You can also follow us on Twitter at AlligatorSports. My Twitter is at Jackson Reyes, JacksonReyes. Topher.
At Topher, Topher _ Adams, ADAMS. Lots of, to be completely honest, a lot of Notre Dame football takes and a bunch of other college football shenanigans. We have a great time.
So if you're looking for that, make sure to follow us there on Twitter. Again, thank you to everyone for listening. This is the Alligator Sports Podcast signing off.